fact, the International Monetary Fund has downgraded its forecast for global growth. The financial institution is warning that the war in Iran is pushing growth lower compared to 2025, and it's predicting a rise in global inflation. Let's go live to CBS News business contributor and business editor of the Dallas Morning News, Javier David. Javier, thank you for joining us today. Okay, looks like we are talking to Javier over here and not over there. All right, Javier, thanks for your time. We appreciate it. So the economy showed resilience even in the face of President Trump's tariffs. So why now are things taking a turn?
Yeah, look, for context, the IMF, and this is not to confuse it with the agency that sends Tom Cruise out on his impossible missions as Ethan Hunt. They're usually the most sober of all of the monetary authorities, mainly because they take a really long view of what's going on in the global economy. And this report kind of puts some of that sobriety on display. So basically, what the IMF is telling us is that inflation is still very much a problem. The rate of price change is going to outpace global growth, and the worst is not even remotely behind us. Even though the market is pricing in way more optimistic scenarios, the S&P has reversed all of the losses over the last 6 weeks since the Iran war started. The index has only dropped about 7.4% at its nadir anyway. So oil is still the major focus. That's up over 20%. We've got a mess in bond yields, as the IMF notes, that ties governments' hands if they need to manage a downturn or blunt an economic crisis. But the global economy is basically facing two particularly stiff headwinds. One is it's inflation, and the other is tariffs, which is feeding inflation. That's still in effect, even though the Supreme Court ruled them unconstitutional. And the other is just these rapidly soaring energy prices that everyone is trying to wrap their heads around.
Okay, so let's shift now to tax season, because we've seen the White House touting bigger tax breaks and more money for Americans and in their pockets. But thanks to the so-called big, beautiful bill, this is why the White House is saying that people are going to get more money this time around. Are the majority of Americans, are they actually seeing that bigger tax refunds? And the second part of that question is, will this then make up for the cost of gas and other impacts this war is having on consumers' wallets?
Right. So both very good questions. The good news is IRS data shows it's tracking that the average check is up 11% from last year to nearly 3,500. Total refunds are up about 15% from last year. The size of the increase actually is closer to $300. That some estimates were expecting $600 or more. Not a bad take, but still not necessarily what everyone, not as gangbusters as people thought. Either way, this is a great opportunity for the White House to shift the conversation away from Iran and sort of talk about these affordability issues that people really see and feel every day. The president's signature legislation has helped blunt some of this, but it's a way to chat about some of the pocketbook issues when it's time when all of the surveys show consumers are very glum about the economy, gas prices, food, housing, all very much sources of economic angst for a lot of the voters. But the big, beautiful bill is basically about tax cuts. Lower wage service workers are going to see a cut. Senior citizens also got a cut. In particular, there's this new tax on tips provision that gives some workers relief from federal taxes, but they still have to pay Social Security and Medicare. It impacts around 6 million workers that earn money from tips, according to the IRS. And
we saw the president touting that yesterday at the White House with a DoorDash order. But I mean, it is still important to note that Americans are not feeling like things are easier on them, which is a very important factor in all of this. Javier David, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it.
Absolutely.